Call to order the Thursday, January 23rd, AMATS Policy Committee meeting. It's 1:30 p.m. In attendance, we have Mr. Flynn, Mr. Birch, Mr. Sullivan, Ms. Heil, and Mr. Campbell. So the board is fully here, and we have a quorum. At this point, Craig, I'd like to have you go through that public involvement announcement, which I still can't remember after all these years.
I'll get you trained up.
No, I can see so now.
Yeah. All AMATS meetings are public meetings, and the public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff or the consultant. The committee will then be given an opportunity to discuss the matter, and then the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. We have before us a proposed agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on said agenda? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous approval? No objection, it's approved. We don't have any minutes this month to approve, so I guess we're along to business items. We have the 2014-14 TIP Amendment Mod Number 8.
Think of that as the 2011 to 2014. It's just a small
Okay.
typo. Although we are only talking about the 2014 year for the most part. So you have your legal size paper there and your memo that says 5A. This is just an administrative modification, and we are looking at needing some additional funding for the O'Malley Road project for right-of-way acquisition. And in order to accomplish that, we are moving some monies out of the payment replacement program. I think the idea was that we'll be able to offset most of that through either state funds or the fact that it's possible we may not do Eagle River Road this year, and that's partly because we may still be working on the other portions of it. But basically, we're moving some monies around there to get the additional right-of-way on O'Malley Road. And then in Table 5, the CMAQ category, the congestion mitigation and air quality, we need to move some funding into the consolidated MTP, our long-range plan. If you look down there in red, you'll see it shows 2013 $800,000. That was money that we had in last year for the update to the MTP. We did not start our MTP last year, so 600,000 of that went to our model update for our transportation model, and the 200,000 was deobligated and moved around the program. So we actually didn't spend any money on our MTP last year. So this year we need to obligate the $900,000 to update our MTP. We need to get moving on that. We'll have a discussion later on kind of the status of that, but we have a lot of work to do with that, and so we really need to get moving on that, and thus the reason for this administrative modification. So moving a little bit of money around to capture some acquisitions needed and get our MTP update done. So the technical committee met on this and approved it at their meeting, and we'd like you to approve it as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
So if we wait another year, will it be $1 million?
Hey, it's inflation, doubt it. This year's kind of big because we do have the model update and we're doing a household travel survey. So those are a couple of things that just constitute a little more work just for the MTP as well. So
let me see if anybody from the assembled crowd has any comments or questions on this. Does anybody out there in the so-called public have any interest in discussing this? Seeing none. Mr. Flynn, I'm sure you have something to say about this. Please carry forward.
Actually, I sent questions ahead of time, but they did engender a couple of more.
Okay.
One of which, and Mr. Lyon did address what doesn't get done with the reduction of the pavement replacement program, but also indicated there may be an opportunity to deobligate the a portion of the Dowling Road project funds. Is that, what's the story there?
I believe there's some funds from the Dowling Road project that will probably be deobligated, and it's possible that we might be able to, I mean, if this is kind of
Mark's
DOT's.
twitching. You might want to.
We won't deobligate any funds from Dowling Road, but what we anticipated, what we were going to AC from 14 into 13, that number may be smaller than what we anticipated, so it may free up a couple. So if you look in the tip, Dowling Road on Table 3,
Yeah, I saw that earlier.
in 2013, we were going to AC $12 million from 14 into 13. We're still working on that final number of what it was, but that may have actually been less. So whatever we didn't half to AC would go back up into pavement replacement.
Okay. How soon do you think you're gonna have a number, Dale?
By next month for sure.
If you'd include it at least in the informational report.
Yeah. Can do
Well,
that.
our original plan was to do, the state is working on a full-blown tip amendment. And we probably would have done some of this in the next month or so, but because we really needed to get moving on the MTP, we kind of rolled it into this as well.
Okay. And then, the other question I had, Mr. Chairman, is just when do you expect the RFP for the MTP consultant to go out? And I can try and find another acronym to throw in there if you'd like.
2 months? Couple months.
Couple months.
We're working through purchasing right now.
Thanks. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Birch? Comments? Ms. Howe? Any comments, Mr. Mayor?
No, no comments, although I'm sure Mr. Burge is upset about the money going into O'Malley Road, and
We can take care of that.
good project.
I had one question, Mr. Line. You said we spent, out of the 13 money, I think you said 600,000 in modeling. Did I misunderstand that?
That's for our model update, our update to our
Model update.
transparent
But
model.
that is not part of the MTP, or is that just a? I thought those were
It's
pretty
a separate
closely linked.
contract, but it is, the travel survey informs the model, the update to the model then is what we use to, update our MTP. So they're intertwined, but they're separate contracts,
Separate contracts, okay,
Yes.
but it's all part of the same work process to get to
basically. yeah.
update the MTP?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further comments or discussion?
Move to approve the TIF amendment, administrative modification number 8.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Birch, I believe. Any further discussion from the committee? Any objection, unanimous approval? Seeing none, it's approved. Thank you. Next is 5310, designated recipient resolution.
So you have this is draft on it, and then the memo in front of it. This is, these 5310 monies come into the city for it says enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. We've received these monies for quite some time. Changes in map 21 require that there be a designated recipient to receive these funds. Basically, the Public Transportation Department is pretty much the only entity that could be the designated recipient, but it just needs to be done in an official manner, and the governor of the state needs to designate who that recipient is. So we have this resolution here before you, which we would like AMATS to pass, and then we can send this to the governor asking him to designate the Public Transportation Department as our designated recipient. So the TAC met on this and approved the resolution as is. We're asking you now to do the same.
Okay, do we have any comments or questions from the audience here? Nope. Okay, committee members, any discussion points? None? I guess I have one, Craig, are these funds in addition to our AMATS allocation, or are they taken from our AMATS allocation?
They're in addition to our AMATS allocation. If you look in Table 7 here, you'll see several different types of funds, and the 5310 funds are just one of them. They're FTA, Federal Transit Administration funds that come to the city. And so in order to use these particular ones, we need to be shown as a designated recipient, so.
And so, did we not receive these funds last year, or was it just kind of in the fog of war during MAP 21's rollout that nobody noticed that we didn't have this designation, or how did that play?
Well, prior to MAP 21, obviously, we didn't need them. I don't know exactly the time frame for when, after MAP 21 passes and when the clock ticked that said you need to have this designation by such and such a time.
I know there's a lot of rulemaking that came through that is just being brought online, so, okay, I think that's all I've got.
Move to approve the resolution for designation of these section 53-110 funds.
Second. Take your pick.
Well done. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous approval? Seeing none, that motion is approved.
And I will get you a clean copy of that. I'll get it through, James is coming by tomorrow, and I'll get a clean copy for you to sign. So I had it, but it's next to my phone in my office where I left it.
Do it tomorrow, or it'll be a while before I can sign it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It'll be done.
Perfect. We have next, we don't have any other business, I take it, Mr. Lyon?
None that I know of.
Okay, informational reports, Glen Highway Muldoon Interchange Project.
Mr. Noble is going to give a presentation for you. We're firing up the projector now.
Good afternoon. We're passing around copies of the presentation in case you have a hard time seeing or would like to supplement or take some notes. We will have copies of all the slides, so you won't have to write down everything you see. I have hopefully it's about a 15-minute presentation here to give you a little bit of an update on where we are with this project. We've had a couple of public meetings already on this project, and we were at the AMATS Technical Advisory Commission last month, or earlier in the month, I should say, and so this is an informational presentation on the project. We're very close to selecting a preferred alternative to move forward with on this project, and I wanted to make sure that you all were familiar with the project and had an opportunity to comment before we get to that stage. Thank you. So, the purpose and need for this project is it's pretty comprehensive. It's to improve capacity, operations, and safety at the Muldoon interchange. Over time, the intersection has become more and more congested. Traffic volumes have increased substantially at this interchange. There's functionally only one through lane in each direction on the bridge on Muldoon Road, and so the through lanes get obstructed by left turn movements, and the whole interchange during peak periods gets very congested. We'll talk a little bit about that, but pedestrian facilities are also limited at this interchange. They're only on one side of the interchange and fairly out of direction for folks to use. Based on our counts, only about 2/3 of the pedestrians even stay on the pedestrian facilities. The rest of them stay on the highway where there's no pedestrian facilities. And then the bridge itself was built in 1974, and it's actually a little bit low. The clearance in one direction is only 15 feet 7 inches, and we try to get about 18 feet clearance under new criteria. Next. So as I mentioned, it was built in 1974, and the traffic volumes at that time were about 22,000 on the Glen Highway and 14,000 on Muldoon Road, and you can see we're well above that now. We actually hit the design volumes for the interchange in the early 2000s, and we're about 10,000 or 15,000 cars over the design volume here in 2014. Land use, just to give you a little bit of bearings, so we've got, of course, the recent commercial development and ever-expanding institutional and uses in military housing on the northwest corner. On the right, northeast corner, we've got Bartlett High, and then this is the road back to the Alaska Native Heritage Center back in here. In the southeast corner, we've got Centennial Municipal Park and a municipal maintenance facility. And then in the southwest corner, it's primarily high-density residential. This is a trailer park here, and then higher density residential uses further down. Next. From an existing traffic perspective, as I mentioned, we've got morning and evening peak periods that are congested, particularly for the left turning movements, being able to access the on and off ramps. Queues in the morning extend well beyond the available storage, and in the evenings we do observe the peak queues extending back into the through movements on the freeway. That's an existing condition today, not projected. And the queues from the left turn movements, there's no signals on the interchange right now, and so the left turn movements have to get a gap to go through, and with the amount of traffic that's built up on the north side of the interchange now, there's fewer and fewer gaps for turning movements. And so those left turn movements, they build up until they spill beyond the available storage for left turns, and then they spill into the through lane, and there's only one through lane, and so then that stops the through movements on the interchange itself. Next. Pedestrian access perspective, this yellow line indicates where the pedestrians are expected to use the interchange today to route north and south through the interchange. These are all grade separated crossings of the ramps and Muldoon Road. The blue lines represent where the majority of the pedestrians who don't use the facilities, where they tend to walk. So roughly 2/3 of the pedestrians use this yellow route, and roughly a third of them either stay up on the highway, stay up on Muldoon Road on one side or the other.
Based on observation or a survey or?
Based on counts. Yep, field counts.
Actually, you've had some fatalities out there for people running across the road too, right?
So there's been 2 recent fatalities in the vicinity of this interchange. One of them was on the east side of the road. I can't remember which side of the ramp, but it was at where the ramp merges onto the highway. Vehicle hit a pedestrian that was crossing the ramp in an undesignated area. And then the other pedestrian fatality that you're probably thinking of is back here at Oklahoma. There was a young boy that was struck while walking his bike across the freeway back by the southbound traffic. Next. So the work that we've been working on to date has largely been preliminary efforts. We have not yet entered the design phases, the actual design phases or the environmental permitting phases. We've been working on the reconnaissance level work at this point, looking at alternatives, conducting public outreach with the agencies and the public. We've had 2 public meetings, as I mentioned. But it's been fairly fast-paced. We started this project roughly last May. We've had 2 public meetings at that time. We've had an interchange workshop with the stakeholders to evaluate all different kinds of interchanges at this location, traffic and noise studies, and the alternatives analysis has yielded two concepts that we feel are feasible at the interchange. Next. From the public's perspective, we've heard there's no such thing as a unanimous project, but this one has pretty widespread public support. Primarily, we've heard folks say, get it done fast, and then folks commenting on the things that we've observed as well, which the pedestrian facilities are a problem, the left turns are a problem, pedestrian facilities are out of the way, the tunnels are a safety concern for some folks. Some folks would like to see better access to Cottonu Commons from a frontage road from the south. And then folks saying, make sure you design for the long term, don't just do a temporary Band-Aid fix out here. Next. We've had very few people who say, don't waste your time, it's working just fine. So we are comparing the 2 build alternatives with the no-build option. The no-build, in this case, does not mean nothing, however. In our no-build scenario, we're comparing it with the inclusion of a safety improvement project, which is putting half signals at these 2 locations at the ramp interchanges. That's a highway safety improvement program funded project to put half signals, which means only a portion of the ramps are going to be subject to those signals. And the objective there is to resolve that issue with gaps for left turning movements onto the on-ramps. What that will do is it will tend to remove the queues off of the off-ramps. Those queues will be able to be released, but instead it will probably back up queues more onto Muldoon Road. So we'll exchange queues on the on-ramps for additional queues on Muldoon Road as an interim step, really, until the larger interchange project can happen. So when we're talking no build, it includes the half signal project, and we're comparing our 2 build alternatives with that upgraded project. Next. The first alternative that we're evaluating is just a reconstruction of the existing partial cloverleaf that's there today. We've got a large area of right-of-way. We've got a fairly efficient function and form in a partial cloverleaf configuration of the interchange. But the new project would reconstruct Muldoon Road and provide a new 6-lane bridge that would have 2 through lanes in both directions, and then a dual left turn lane that's configured back to back. So dual lefts this direction and dual lefts this direction. This is very intuitive for motorists. It's going to be, folks, once it's complete, it would be fairly obvious how to use this interchange. Pedestrian facilities would be on both sides of the road, and fairly direct routes and pretty straightforward interchange improvements. All the ramps would be subject, at this point we'd have 2 full full interchanges, or signalized intersections for all the ramp movements. Next. The bridge itself would be a little bit longer than the existing bridge because we would still provide, we'd need to provide for the 3 through lanes and the exit lane. All of these lanes are there today, but we would also be widening to make sure we accounted for a future high occupancy vehicle lane, which is in the the MTP as a longer term project. So overall, the bridge length would be roughly 310 feet long. And the bridge itself, if you were standing on Muldoon Road, looking down the road, this is what the bridge would look like. You'd have 10-foot multi-use trails on both sides of the road, 2 12-foot travel lanes in both directions for through lanes, and then the dual left turn lanes, which I mentioned, which would be back-to-back in both directions. The bicycle plan does call for paved shoulders, not striped bike lanes, but it does call for the widened paved shoulders, which we've included 5-foot shoulders on both sides for. Next. The second alternative that we're considering is called the diverging diamond, also known as a double crossover diamond. This is another form of a diamond interchange, very similar to a tight diamond or the other Tudor diamond. The only difference is that the roads cross over each other, and so for northbound traffic, this is the route that you would travel. You'd be heading northbound, you'd cross over through a signalized intersection, and then you'd cross through a second one at this location. The primary advantage of this configuration is that from under this interchange configuration, all of the right and left turning movements are not subject to the signals, and there's no opposing traffic movements for them. So they are all free movements for right and left turns. So if you're headed north on the Glen Highway from Muldoon Road, you come up and you turn right. If you're headed south, you come through this intersection and you turn left with no signal here and no opposing traffic. The same thing in the southbound direction. Off-ramps are all merged configurations for all movements. Pedestrian configuration is a little less traditional at this configuration. There still would be pedestrian facilities on both sides of Muldoon Road at the approaches to the interchange, but there would be pedestrian crossings of the right turn ramps, and then that would most likely be signalized, and then there would also be signalized pedestrian crossing that would merge the pedestrians to one side or the other. There's no need to have pedestrian facilities on both bridges. So we would route them to one side or the other. I'll give you the cross section. Obviously, I need more caffeine. I can't hold my red pens still, but they would be the pedestrian facilities would follow right there, and then the same mirror image on the north side. Again, it would reconstruct the bridges. There would be 2 new 3-lane bridges in both directions. One of the other advantages of this configuration is that we've got a little bit of an interaction problem that exists right now between because of the close space between this ramp intersection and the boundary signal. With the new signals that will be going in here, they're going to be fairly close to boundary. This configuration does kind of maximize the space between those two, between the future signal and the existing signal at boundary. Next. This is what a diverging diamond looks like in constructed. This is in Missouri. There's over 30, actually it says 20, but we've did some more online research. There's actually more than 30 of them in the United States today. And so you can see the free-flowing movements. In this case, the bridges are all one structure and the pedestrians go right down the middle. In our case, it'll be a little bit different configuration, as I'll discuss here in a minute. But what we find is that most people that have driven these, they're actually fairly intuitive. There's much less of a learning curve than there is for a roundabout. In general, that's the feedback that we get. Most folks, these signals are very efficient because they're really only controlling throughs in both directions. There's no turning movements that occur at those traffic signals. Next. So this is the configuration of the bridges. If you're standing on the Glen Highway looking at the bridge, as you recall, the partial cloverleaf B has an additional width over here for the exit ramp that goes underneath the bridge. So in this configuration, we're actually able to shorten up the bridges by about 50 feet over over the partial cloverleaf configuration. So we just have the 3 through lanes and the future HOV lane in both directions. The bridges themselves would be two-span bridges that would include 3 through lanes and the future, it would have 3 travel lanes in both directions. So on the left side would be the northbound bridges, on the right side would be the southbound bridge. In both cases, we've put 5-foot shoulders on either side of the traveling public traveled way here for bicycle maneuvers. And then we've also got our 10-foot multi-use trail here. Next.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I ask a quick question here.
Sure.
Any particular reason to do 2 bridges in this option as opposed to one wider one?
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, good question. So I just wanted to point out here that we are making sure that we consider fully the non-motorized traffic in the area. We're in accordance with the bike plan. Both scenarios remove the existing kind of indirect route around the interchange. The partial cloverleaf and the diverging diamond have pedestrian facilities on both sides as you approach the interchange, but as we mentioned, only the partial cloverleaf is probably more intuitive for most pedestrians, but the diverging diamond, also very straightforward pedestrian facilities. They're just a little bit of an education probably as folks get accustomed to the double crossover diamond. Next. So one of the primary differences between the 2 options is how to construct them. We've got 30,000 cars a day on Muldoon Road, and quite a bit of through movements now that we've got the commercial development on the northwest side. So looking at how and comparing the 2 options of how they would be built. The construction phasing for the partial cloverleaf would require that we build a temporary bridge on one side or the other of the existing bridge. That temporary bridge would have to have essentially the same number of lanes as the current Muldoon Road Bridge, because we would still need to accommodate 30,000 cars a day for the duration of the project. So that would be a temporary bridge, then we'd reroute the traffic onto the temporary bridge, then we would remove the existing bridge, build the permanent bridge, and then we would be able to put the traffic back on the permanent bridge and remove the temporary bridge. The rest of it is pretty straightforward on the construction phasing. Next. The construction phasing of the diverging diamond is one of the more significant benefits of this concept, in that we can build the bridges for the diverging diamond on either side of the existing structure without having to build a temporary bridge. So the traffic would continue to use Muldoon Road during construction while we're building these, and then after we get the 2 new bridges built, we would be able to reroute the traffic as shown by the yellow lines here, and then come back through and remove the existing bridge from the center of the other 2 bridges. So that is the reason for the separation. Next. So looking at the comparison of the 2 options, as you can see here, we've kind of labeled the red dots as unacceptable, and a blue dot that's with the half line is acceptable, and the blue dots that's full circle is the best option. To be honest with you, this does not mean that this one's twice as good as this one. It just means that full blue dot's just a little bit better, okay? As you can see here, the 2 options are fairly close when you're looking at the operations, the safety, the network connectivity, the pedestrian access, and the constructability. From the engineering perspective, there's really neither of those would be a wrong answer. Either one of them would be an acceptable solution, would meet the long-term needs for the traveling public. It would be a safe interchange, would be good for pedestrian and bicycle access. From a constructability perspective, both of them are certainly feasible. The diverging diamond is just a little bit better. Partial cloverleaf is given a full circle on the pedestrians because it's a little bit more intuitive. And diverging diamond also, even though it doesn't have the ramps and the big clover leaves, the diverging diamond is actually more efficient and can accommodate more traffic volume than the partial cloverleaf. You get about 10 more years design life out of the diverging diamond than you do the partial cloverleaf, and that's because those traffic signals only have to accommodate the through movements. All the turning movements are separated out. So if you were to get a 30-year life out of the partial cloverleaf, you're going to get a 40-year life out of the diverging diamond. And the diverging diamond is about $8 or $9 or $10 million less than the partial cloverleaf, and that's primarily because of the lack of the need to construct that temporary bridge structure as part of the construction phasing. Next. So I covered all that. Next. From a schedule standpoint, this graphic illustrates where we've been and where we're headed. Back in April is when we started this project, and we had really a wide open look at all of our alternatives. And as we've put constraints on those alternatives, we've narrowed it down to 2, and we're very close to where we're going to approach, select a preferred alternative and move into the design phases. And so this orange line indicates where we are today. As we select that preferred alternative and move into the design phases, we're anticipating that it'll be 2 to 3 years to get the environmental design and get through the construction process. So we're anticipating construction start no later than 2016, and it's probably a 2-year, certainly a 1-year, maybe a 2-season construction project. Next. There's our contact information for the project. We do have a project-specific Facebook with over 1,200 people who've liked our project, our Facebook site so far, which is awesome. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from the public. And just to put a plug in for that, we've gotten several good comments from folks who say this is a great way to keep tabs on the project, particularly for a project that involves so many commuter traffic. It's not like we can send flyers out to everybody within 500 feet of this interchange and get everybody involved who uses this interchange. Everybody in the entire Anchorage Bowl uses this interchange at some point or another, and this is a good way to reach out to them. So next, I think that's it. Any questions?
Great job.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let me see if there's any from the assembled crowd here. Some of you have probably seen it before. Okay, Mr. Flynn?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, toward the end there, you mentioned very briefly allows for a one-way frontage road, and I saw that mentioned in the public comment section. Where would that frontage road go and for what purpose?
I go back to the extra slide that's got that. So this is an extra slide here I put in here to answer that question.
Oh, see, the mystery slide.
Yeah.
What did I tell you?
I was anticipating this
You gotta know how to figure this stuff out, don't you?
So this is the partial cloverleaf configuration, and here's the tight diamond, or the diverging diamond configuration. Both alternatives allow for, in the MTP, there's a future frontage road anticipated on the north side of the Glen Highway between Boniface and Muldoon Road. In both configurations, the best configuration is a one-way frontage road, not a two-way frontage road, that would merge off of the on-ramp and head towards Boniface. So it would be one way from Muldoon to Boniface, okay?
Mm-hmm.
In both those configurations, there's room, there's about the same amount of space. There's no real difference in the amount of space that they require. The primary difference between the two is that under the partial cloverleaf configuration, you've got this all-way intersection right here, which will allow movements from every direction to access that frontage road. In the diverging diamond configuration, you'll notice that if you're coming in from Eagle River and you get off at the diverging diamond, you're routed north on Muldoon Road. There's not a crossing ability there, and so you can't go from Eagle River and then get on the future frontage road. That's why that option is given a little bit lower rating than the partial cloverleaf for that one movement. All other movements would be accommodated to get onto the frontage road. You can come from the south, you can come from the north, you can come from the east, and get on the frontage road that way.
Okay. If I recall correctly, there's an exit ramp on Boniface, right?
There's an exit ramp on Boniface, yes.
To access Boniface,
Yep.
so that doesn't really affect someone coming from Eagle River unless they're trying to get to Cottonwood Commons. Is this a back door to Cottonwood Commons?
Yeah, it could be. It certainly could be a back door to Cottonwood Commons, and that's probably what most people are anticipating there. It's also a connection to, there's also a Also in the MTP, there's a flyover planned at the Turpin intersection that would connect in with the frontage road as well. And so that's another potential connection here for that frontage road.
Okay.
Staging for traffic for the base perhaps, if they had some kind of big function.
What I would keep in mind is that that frontage road relies on our ability to acquire right-of-way for.
You need to introduce yourself.
Yes.
Jump into the
Thanks.
conversation.
I'm Tom Schmidt, the project manager from DOT on this. What I was interjecting there is that frontage road relies on our ability to acquire right-of-way for that. And
DOD, right away?
Yes.
yes, and in lieu of that, we thought we'd probably try to focus on getting something that we could accomplish in our lifetimes done, and I think we have done that for capacity reasons in the long range. So we're pretty excited. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I should have introduced Tom at the beginning of the presentation. Tom's here, project manager from DOT, and then also Gary from Kittleson is also part of our team, has been working on the project as well.
Okay, so you can probably delete the reference to the frontage road and write it under the documents and present to us.
What?
Interesting theory, but I mean, the DOD is not going to get the land, so.
So did you have any other comments, Mr. Flynn?
That's it, thanks. The presentation.
Mr. Birch, any thoughts, comments?
Great, no, I'm very familiar with that intersection, and, I think this will be a great improvement. What does Tacotnu anticipate as far as their, does this fulfill most of their projections? And, I mean, obviously, this is the gateway to their very significant investment there. This match, traffic growth and development, and, I mean, you're working with them?
So Tacotnu has, they based their approval of their site development based on no access from the frontage road. Their approval of their square footage of their building was based on access from North Muldoon.
Okay.
Based on that configuration. It was identified when they did those improvements that the interchange was going to have congestion issues. That was identified when they did the project. It's one of the reasons why the state has pursued funding to take a look at this interchange. The Tacotnu Commons folks are they haven't participated in the public meetings per se yet, but we have received some written communication from them, and I think we're going to be increasing our communication with them. They have expressed some concerns about the diverging diamond and making sure that it from a pedestrian configuration, and that they're primarily worried about discouraging use of the Tacotnu Commons facility, obviously, but at the same time, they also don't want us to disrupt traffic during construction to get access to them. And so if we could make it as easy as possible to get to them and only work during midnight and 7 a.m., they would love it. So we're going to be working through the issues with them to make sure that we answer their questions, yes.
Okay, great presentation.
Thanks. Ms. Howe, anything? Mr. Mayor, comments?
Just one, as you head north on Muldoon, before you take the curve towards the hospital, on the right-hand side there, been a challenge area for a long time because you've got a poor shoulder and horrible lighting as you get to Heritage Drive and then Bartlett entrance. Is that part of the scope of work there to improve that shoulder and lighting there?
So you're talking about right here, Mayor?
Yep.
Okay, so there is a separate project that's in progress right now, which is called the North Muldoon Improvements Project, which is being funded partially with mitigation money from the Veterans Administration improvements and a contribution from the Tacotnu development as well, but also supplemented by, I believe, state funds. I'm not 100% sure. But there is a project that's, as you drive out there today, you'll see those signals are all on span wire. The medians have not been constructed. It's certainly not in a finished state. And there is a separate project that's in the design phases right now that should go to construction this summer to resolve the pedestrian facilities, fix the lighting out there, put raised medians in, put permanent traffic poles in, those kind of things.
And then, I mean, even back when I was on the assembly, that was a area that I thought had gotten some funding, and maybe it's just now coming to fruition, but again, it's a dangerous shoulder there, and lighting's poor.
Yeah, I'll go back and look and see where the extent of the, that's a project I'm working on as well, that's why I know about it. So I'll go back and look and see where the lighting, how far back the lighting goes on that. You know, the school traffic comes back in through the trees here and connects in, and one of the things we've got to work with as the stakeholders as we get into this a little bit more is making sure that on the margins of our interchange, that we make sure that we're getting good connectivity to the school and to the existing pedestrian facilities that are on both ends of the corridor. So,
Thanks.
Anything else? Steve, I got 2 or 3 things, and a couple of them are probably pretty easy. Have you talked to the truckers?
I believe they came to one of the early public meetings. I can't remember for sure if Abe was there or not. But the trucking folks have requested that we meet with them. And so we're likely going to be doing that. I don't want to speak for Tom, but we have
Look forward to meeting with them soon.
We will be meeting with them, yes. So, so either at the Alaska Trucking Association meeting or Teresa has also requested a meeting at the Freight Advisory Committee meeting. So probably one of those 2 opportunities in the next month or 2. So.
Okay, you talked about pedestrians, and I guess what we're really talking about when we talk about the circuitous route is kind of out of direction travel for pedestrians. And this is kind of a big picture question. If you don't know, I don't know that there is an answer, but do we have any reliable statistical way of telling how far out of their way a pedestrian will go to be safe? I mean, we build these overcrossings all over town, and my experience is a lot of people just ignore them. If they can find a gap in the fence, they'll run across the street rather than take a flight of stairs up, over, and down. I hate to pour a bunch of money into pedestrian facilities if we can just draw a straight line between point A and point B and realize that's where the pedestrians are going to be.
Right, Burgaw Street used to prove that for us, right? There was somebody almost getting killed on the shadow of the overcrossing almost every year.
Right. But is there any scientific way or any accepted measurement that we can use to tell us that pedestrians will actually use a brand-new facility if we build it?
I'm not aware of any kind of statistics like that. We can certainly do some research. We've received some public comments that we should include the resolution of this crossing back at Oklahoma Street in this project. From our perspective, it's so far away from this project that we don't think there'll be any benefit to the Oklahoma crossing, as we don't think that people will walk this far out of their way. The people that are going to cut across there are going to do it anyways. The minor pedestrian time we save them on this project will not discourage them from making that crossing. The best thing that can be done is to make it as difficult to cross as possible with the fencing and
Well, we repair fences every year. People kick holes, cut holes, do whatever they can just so they can make the straight line.
Right, and my philosophy on getting folks to use the routes is to make it as painful to use an alternative route as possible. So.
You use the stick, not the carrot.
Or I could do the full approach, which is we make the proposed facility as nice and convenient and as attractive as possible.
So, last question: what kind of public? When you say you've got a bunch of followers on Facebook and you've received a bunch of comments, I mean, do you have is there a preponderance of public sentiment about one of these options or the other, or is it just we agree something needs to be done, but people haven't really weighed in on the options per se?
We have not done a statistical assessment of, looking for the wrong person, Rachel's in charge of our public outreach. We have not done a statistical assessment of the comments, but I would say that if you just went purely on which one we received more positive feedback on, it's probably 60-40 or 70-30 in favor of the diverging diamond.
Okay.
Several of the institutions that are in the area have come out in favor of the diverging diamond. The Broman folks, as I mentioned, expressed some concerns about the diverging diamond, preferred the partial cloverleaf, but we haven't had really a sit-down meeting with them to discuss the impacts of that desire on their part, because it's a much greater impact to their business during construction. that they aren't aware of. Sorry, Broman is the development company that developed Takanu Commons. Sorry.
Well, I guess that leads to another question. I said I had one more, but I guess I really have one more on top of that is, we spent a fair amount of time and money when we rolled out roundabouts in this town doing public education, to put it politely. We spend a lot of time meeting with groups of people. We spend a lot of time putting up websites, putting up signs, advertisements, everything we could think of to try to educate people on how to use those roundabouts and stuff. And you say this is a little more intuitive and it shouldn't require that level of training, but have you accommodated that in your cost when you talk about the cost of building these two alternatives? The fact that one of them might require a fairly substantial amount of public involvement that may not be in the pure construction budget?
So there is not a line item for education in those project development costs. But we have accommodated pre-construction costs in there, and I think that we've looked into that enough already to know that within the amount of money that we've allocated for the pre-construction costs, I think it can easily fit within that amount of money. We've looked into creating a video. We've looked into creating a video that would demonstrate and animate the use of a diverging diamond. It's been done in many other states, actually, Oregon, Kansas City.
Video?
And so the folks that generated the Oregon, the folks that generated the video for the Oregon diverging diamond are actually going to be on our team to generate a similar video for this project if we move forward with the diverging diamond, which I think it seems to be the one that we're getting the more support for. If we head that direction, the diverging diamond, we'll put together that video. We can post it on our website and make it usable. But when I say it's in general, it's got a better safety record than other types of interchanges, and the negative feedback that you often get in new areas with new roundabouts, you're not seeing that. You're not seeing that in the areas where the diverging diamonds have gone in. There's not too many websites that are anti-diverging diamond and things like that where you like you to see on the roundabouts. So
I'm being a little self-serving because obviously technically it's pretty cool, but when the backlash comes, it usually starts at my office. It's not really a technical issue when it hits my office. It's kind of an emotional one, so I'm being a little touchy about my future.
understood.
I think, Rob, we realize this is the first one in this state, and it is a fairly new, but we are planning to learn from others. We're going to contact the other DOTs that have constructed them and find out where the shortcomings were, whether it's wintertime operations, pedestrians, what are the things that we could bolster in that public involvement effort, and we plan to be on top of that. But as Steve indicated, the information we've gotten from others on these is that they are more intuitive than the roundabout, and we aren't seeing the backlash, and so it's been pretty positive.
Great.
Yeah, I know, you can put that forward right to my number, right? So,
Go team.
yes.
All right, thanks. I think we've probably tortured that long enough. Unless you had any closing remarks you care to make, Steve?
No, from my perspective, I just think that if the $10 million difference, that's one of the primary differences, the reduced construction impacts, and from the statistical data that's been collected so far on the other DDIs, it's also proving to be a safety benefit as well. So those three reasons combined are really the impetus that we're feeling towards pushing towards the DDI. So. All right.
I would think how long it lasts, 10 more years longer, and it lasts even, if we had an increase in population that's unexpected, it would handle that as well, the entry traffic.
The interesting thing about the diverging diamond, it isn't going to be the limiting factor. It's actually going to be the feeders to the diverging diamond that are going to be the limitations of handling traffic. It actually will handle the traffic.
Yep.
And it does add it looks like it has another 10 years. Right now, we have a design year of 2040, which is 25 years, 26 years from now. And in terms of interchanges, that seems like a pretty short lifespan. So adding another 10 years to that is pretty big. I guess I'd like to touch on one other thing. That's this project was a go bonds. It's been funded with $15 million so far. So it has kind of taken a little bit of a back door to our program. It hasn't followed the federal process through the STEP or anything. So they've allocated 15 million to date, so it does I mean, we're gonna do the design and everything, but if in the end, somebody decides not to fund this, it wouldn't go forward. It is receiving a lot of positive feedback, which is great. And the timelines, very little environmental issues, very little right-of-way issues. It's a unique project in that respect, plus the design itself, it looks like if we head towards a diverging diamond, which it looks like we are, that it is going to be the first one in the state, so it's pretty exciting from an engineer's standpoint. So, but it does rely on us getting appropriations for the additional money in terms of state or the department deciding to do some other way to fund that. But we're proceeding with state dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Birch?
Is there any consideration given to leaving the existing bridge there and using it for pedestrian traffic or something? I mean, or is it, I know you're going to build the new bridges on either side of it, but I just was wondering if it'd have any merit to use that as a kind of widened pedestrian. It looks like-
At this time, based on where we're at, just completing the preliminary engineering, we've thought about that. Is there any utility to the existing bridge? And right now, it's bordering on 40 years old, and we're looking at removing it. Now, if during the process we just find that there is something that is utility, but we will keep it. Just having something and it being 40 years old we still have to maintain it even when it's there. So it is quite a large structure if it was used, say, for pedestrians, so.
The big issue there is that it's only 15 feet, 7
Oh,
inch
that's right.
clearance.
Yeah,
And
that's
So you're
we would-
stuck on that.
Yeah, our new
Yeah.
bridge would be 18 feet of clearance, and so we would probably relocate it if, for no other reason than that, so.
Thanks.
Mr. Steelman?
Yeah, I just wonder if you've done any work with the military in terms of, do they have any other plans to change their Muldoon entrance or exit, or do they anticipate any increase in traffic through there? That's,
We've certainly been in contact with them, inviting them to the meetings and such, and I don't think we've gotten any feedback as far as increased traffic. Right now, you have the VA, the school, Commons. I mean, there's a lot of traffic feeding that now that wasn't there, I mean, not that long ago. In early 2000s, it was Bartlett was there and a minor entrance to the base. But that was the big thing about constructability about this project, is coming up with a solution that didn't inhibit traffic during construction, and that was the challenge, and they rose to that challenge. And by being able to construct bridges on either side of it, it does maintain that flow during that, recognizing I didn't want Rob's or anybody else's phone to be ringing other than mine, saying thank you.
and then the other one is with the school district in terms of the traffic. I don't suspect there's going to be any traffic change from them in terms of volume, and you're going to enhance the pedestrian access, I suspect.
Oh, yes.
So everybody should be happy, maybe.
There'll actually be 6% less teachers going out to park.
That's true. 6.1.
Yeah. Okay, is that it? Any other follow-on questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Craig, MTP update, is that you?
It's going to be Vivian, our senior planner, Vivian Underwood,
Okay.
because she kind of created this, and I'm going to pass this out, and I'll get some to the public here in just a second, but that's a tiny sheet of paper with small print to practice eye exercises. I know you need it. Yeah, make a big paper airplane out of that.
That's the size I can read, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Vivian Underwood. I'm Senior Transportation Planner with Municipality of Anchorage and staff to AMATS. For this item, you have a slightly oversized sheet of paper that gives our integrated UPWP task for the next 2 years, leading up to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The Technical Advisory Committee asked us that we prepare this, and specifically Ms. Heil, who's here with us today. It is a good thing to do, and we intend to keep it maintained. Just real quickly, on the left-hand side, you see some colors, and that indicates dependencies of certain key tasks. And also the lines on the right is a different way to show some of those same dependencies. Now, what I'd like to do is highlight some things that the schedule does not tell you. At the very bottom, is our target date for the MTP of May 25th, 2016. That is exactly 4 years from the Federal Highway Administration approval of the Air Quality Conformity Report for the current 2035 MTP. We are motivated to meet that deadline because if we don't, we can be penalized by FHWA to not be able to obligate funds for any new projects or any new phases of current projects. So it behooves us to stay on schedule. And there's a couple of tasks in here that we don't usually do with every Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. And those specifically, if you look at line 19, the household 21, household travel survey, and that's directly connected to line 48, which is the travel demand model update. Those two projects, we actually intended to get started with those a year ago. Because of the process of getting started between preparation of the TORA and the municipal procurement process, actually it's taken a lot longer than we thought. The dates are subject to negotiation and contracts. We have had the household travel survey was out for RFP and that closed, and it's in negotiations right now. And we are unable to discuss that right now. We don't know what's happening. We need to get the data delivery from that project at the end of September, and that's going to be an input down on line 53 to the travel demand model update. In the past, frankly, it's taken longer to do both of these tasks when we did it for the 2005 LRTP. So a lot depends on what the consultants are able to do for us, and we're just going to hope they're going to be able to help us. Another thing I want to tell you about is line 50 mentions the policy and procedure number 6 report. You all may recall that in, I believe it was August, you all approved the policy and procedure number 6 that requires a report be presented on June 1st of standardized socioeconomic assumptions for the model. And we don't anticipate even being able to get that information for you until October 1st. We don't need it until October 1st, and we'll probably ask you all for an extension until October for that information. Another thing that's really interesting is that ISER, who we've always depended on for our socioeconomic information, is late with their report. So they're not likely to have their forecast for us in time for us to prepare our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So Teresa is looking into options for that, maybe contracting out, and we're looking at a couple of other things. So it's going to be rather sporty getting ready for this MTP, but we are dedicated and committed to getting it done. I would like to tell you that we have 3 RFPs right on the street right now. One is for the travel demand model update, one is for the ITS architecture update, and one is for the congestion management process update. Now, all of these projects are interrelated. And it's good that they're out together because we expect the consultants to work with each other on these projects. So what we'd like to do is have a standing item on your agenda if you are interested to keep you updated on how we're doing on this project, on our schedule.
Okay, is that
That's my spiel.
that's your spiel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And
I guess I'll ask if anybody in the audience has any comments or questions about Ms. Underwood's chart and/or discussion points? No? Mr. Flynn?
Which one's Teresa?
Oh,
I see TV here a lot. I presume that's you?
That would be me.
Okay, doing all the work.
And I know who BR is. Who's JB? Is that you?
That's
You.
me,
All right.
James Boyle. I'm new. James Boyle.
Why don't you stand up and
Sure.
introduce yourself?
I'm actually going to be taking Bart's place. I'm the new AMATS coordinator with DOT.
Oh, okay.
And I've only been here for about 3 weeks, so Bart's trying to transition me into this position as he transitions into another position. But I'm very excited to be here. Came from Florida, worked for several MPOs in the Transportation Authority in Jacksonville. So I'm looking forward to working here and doing a good job.
Welcome aboard, James.
Thank you.
Where's Bart going?
He's
Airport.
I'm moving to the aviation side of planning.
didn't know there was. So not to get too distracted in people's careers, Mr. Burch, do you have anything on
No,
this?
great brief. This is, it's nice to have an exhibit like this, so it really lays it out well. Thank you.
Cindy, anything?
I'd like to say thank you. The difficulty is there's not just the MTP, but we have a TIP update that has to come through, and you have a UPWP which has a number of items, and trying to make sure that it's not just the AMATS staff, but all of us are looking at it and trying to find when the critical points for decision-making needs to happen, and to recognize that, some hard decisions may have to be made, or things have to happen that you can't say later, oops, I didn't know about it. So this is an intent to have informed decision-making and to help keep track of a lot of information that we have to do. And frankly, I'll say that I think that, since I don't work for the city, that they have a vacancy or they lost a position and they really need it back. It's to be federally funded. They have too much work to do with what they have. And if we really want to try to meet these things, the municipality and the assembly needs to figure out what they're going to do, because there's a lot of work here.
Mr. Gamble and I have talked about that in the past.
Yeah, so anyway, now you have a pictorially.
I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I would just like to say thank you so much.
I appreciate it even more.
I get on you guys so much for not having stuff. I have to get, when it happens, you have to give them credit for it. They did a really good job, and I appreciate it.
Okay, I guess I want to interject a couple things here. I wouldn't mind having an update on this periodically. I don't know if we need to have it every month or every quarter or what it is. But one of the things I'd like to see on here is, and you've kind of already alluded to it, is I assume there's some intermediate deadlines in here that are pretty important. And I guess from my perspective, saying that we need to have something done in May of 2016 is great, that we know what the end goal is. But if you're anything like me or my kids that doing homework or whatever, things seem to wait until the last possible minute to get done. And I guess it's just human nature. But to me, having intermediate goals is a very effective way of trying to keep a long-term project on schedule. And so I would encourage you to set up some intermediate goals, and I'm used to a slightly different presentation, but quite often there's, a red dot or something out there that says, by this date, we need to have the draft report done, or we need to have a submission to EPA on this date, or something leading down towards your final ultimate goal. So that would be my suggestion, but I would say that, Craig, I don't have any problem, periodically having an update on this, but I don't think I want it once a month.
Okay.
So fit in with your schedule what you think is appropriate, and let's do it. But expect tough questions if you don't make your schedules. Okay? Okay. All right, thank you. Anything further on this, Craig?
No, not exactly.
Okay, so then we are down to, do you have something else you'd like to talk about?
I just wanted to mention real
Information?
quick, we have been working with Tabata for a while to get a presentation on their updated assumptions and all the work that they're doing. And we're expecting to have Judy Doherty at our next TAC to present, and I would assume then she could follow on at the policy committee meeting next month to do that presentation. She said barring her being called down to Juneau, she'll be there to present, so I'm looking forward to that for a while.
All right, so next month's calendar, sounds fine. Do we have any other committee comments? Mr. Steele? Nope. Mr. Burke? Mr. Flynn, sorry, Flynn, got ahead of myself.
I may be have been doing this for too long, because I'd actually heard of a diverging diamond interchange long before today.
Excellent. Put you over the engineering side of the world, yes. Mr. Burke? No comments, Ms. Fowle? I don't think I have any either. So I guess our next policy committee meeting is February 27th, right back here at 1:30. And with that, we are adjourned.